All right, what's up, guys? This week we wanted to talk about managing itises. And by itises, I'm referring mostly to your tendinitis, capsulitis, bursitis, fasciitis, and then in a more long-term sense, arthritis. And really what the overarching point of this is all of these different itises really kind of boil down to one thing, one or two things, but predominantly it is an improper distribution of force. So whether that's force summation or in a concentric or muscular production sense, or if it's in force management or in more of an eccentric sense. But when we look at things like jumper's knee, tennis elbow, plantar fasciitis, these are all indicators that the surrounding structures and systems, the muscular system, the fascial system, are improperly distributing force. And the outcome of that is an overstressing or an overtaxation of a joint and a tendon. When we have this problem repetitively, it needs to be recognized that you are doing something wrong. Having chronic long-term elbow pain, knee pain, foot pain, these things should not happen. And it is not necessarily a derivative of or a consequence of training. However, the lack of improvement can definitely be tied to poor programming or poor training applications. So we're going to get into some of this stuff tonight, and this will kind of be a buckshot approach at how you go about managing these itises in the moment and kind of in the short-term sense, and where better to start than with Olympic weightlifters with chronic joint pain.
Well, how much time do you have? For Olympic weightlifters specifically, we see a lot of issues with joint pain in the knees, in the hips, in the shoulders, in the elbows, in the wrists. Lifters have this approach of just shut up and grind through, keep going, keep pushing, blah, blah, blah. Don't look weak. And the reality of it is that there's a time and a place for that. We're doing the same movements over and over again in our programming, right? We're squatting, we're pulling, and we're doing some variation of the snatch and the clean and jerk on various days. So there's not a ton of variation as far as the movements are concerned, which means if you've got an elbow issue and you're cleaning 2 out of your 4 days out of training, it's not going to feel good. And the answer is not, oh, just shut up and keep pushing forward, right? You need to figure out what your body needs and how you can adjust your programming to allow you to continue training without continuing to further exacerbate the problem.
Well, here's another common issue with the Olympic weightlifting realm, especially too, is what the program says.
Sure.
Right. If the program says this, and this, then I got to do this, and this. My hands are tied. I'm very conscientious of this with all remote programming, and I'm sure the same goes for you in person with your weightlifting groups. But just because the template says this or that, it doesn't inherently mean that you have to oblige to it, exactly as it's scripted. That's especially true when there's pain or there's nagging injuries with certain areas. So make sure that on the athlete side, you're interactive with your coaches, you're addressing these things with them. Make sure that they're informed of what's going on. Don't ever feel the need to, masquerade the pain or anything like that. Like, have a conversation about it so that there can be a solution. And
I feel like for coaches, the culture that you establish and you set up with your athletes, whether it's in the gym or online, your athletes need to know that they can come to you and ask those questions. And it's not just well, this is what it says. It's a simple conversation that you should be willing to have and explain to them. I have a youth athlete right now, and he came in and he was like, I really want to train, but it's uncomfortable in the front rack position. What do you think I should do today? And we took a look at his program, we saw what he had, and we adjusted based off of that. So we took out, anything in that front rack position. We had him front squat. Instead of front squats, we squatted with a safety bar. So that way it wasn't bothering his elbow. Pulls felt fine. So we had him do some more pulls and pauses in different positions from the floor, rather than having to complete the entirety of the lift. So that way he's coming in, he's still training, but more importantly, he doesn't feel like he's losing anything strength-wise, because he's still able to train, but we're also not just repetitively aggravating that elbow for no reason. Yeah,
it really just boils down to, very simply, is the juice worth the squeeze? Mm-hmm. And you just have to, you have to calculate both for that day and then the days that follow, what is going to be the outcome of making this or that decision. And for the coaches, I would just slightly tack on to what Nicole was just saying, and add that your goal should always ultimately be to develop and instill autonomy in your athletes. And, if we are going to put an emphasis on that, then there has to be a strong dialogue or communication that works both ways. But, you know, if we started out by saying with this that all of these itises are a byproduct or an outcome of improper force distribution, and so, you know, we've kind of addressed like the precautionary aspects of this, but now looking at it from more of the mechanical sense, you know, the difference between acute and chronic injuries is normally trauma and then volume, or intensity and then volume. So with acute injuries, that is most often going to be an absolute intensity, or in most cases, a force applied an amount of time that the body or the tissue cannot tolerate or sustain. The vectors are also going to be a factor there, but to stay on track here with the chronic injuries or the itises, it speaks more to the daily behaviors and the natural patterning of things. So for the coaches, that being your programming or periodization. Mm-hmm. For athletes and our, you know, followers that are just kind of recreational enthusiasts or just gym goers, you know, this is where you have to have that minimum sense of kind of training comprehension to be able to recognize when you're getting negative feedback on something. Mm-hmm. And again, these consistent chronic joint pains, that's not something that you should experience during training. But what I'm getting to with this is, once you've gotten out of that early phase window and the pain has been controlled, you don't want to avoid strength work. It's a common, almost intuitive response or thought to suggest that high intensity loading or strength training in general is going to be damaging for joint injuries or tendinitis or such. And that's not the case. In fact, it's absolutely required for the joint and for the injury to fully heal and restore itself. And the way that we want to go about progressing this is working in incremental fashions to get there. So you don't need to worry about what you can or have done in the past. You need to focus on really what you can do at the moment, and then just consistently putting a little bit more on each time. Another big one is going to be time under tension. So doing a lot of exercises with prolonged eccentric motions, prolonged isometric holds. These are all things that help both the tendinous aspect of this, but also the ligamentous aspect of it, where we're addressing both the tissue stability or strength, and then also addressing the proprioceptive aspect of the joint receptors. The last step in all of this is addressing the disproportion between muscle groups or between, you know, body regions or fascial tissues for all intents and purposes. Because when you have these prolonged itises, over time, you're going to develop compensatory patterns to them. And what that's going to do is basically create a potential cascade effect of another set of problems kind of unfolding. Mm-hmm. So you need to be very mindful of what these potential compensatory patterns may be or include, what you're doing to kind of bypass or reroute around it in training or in you know, sport, and then be mindful of how you're programming or accommodating for that moving forward, so that you don't finish up having an injury to having another injury.
Yeah.
You may have a thing or two to say on that.
Just call me right out, won't we? I went from having a hip issue 2 years ago to fixing it, doing my PT exercises and what I was supposed to do, went back to training regularly how I wanted to. The hip felt good, so I really didn't need to do any of those little exercises anymore. And then lo and behold, that crept back up in. But not only is it now my hip that's an issue, my back is starting to become a factor too. And in working, you know, shout out Amanda at Direct Performance, she's been fantastic in not only helping me correct my back, but also looking at, you know, my hip a little bit deeper and really figuring out how the two are correlated and what we can do to fix them. If you don't know or take the time to know what's wrong, you're just like, oh, my hip hurts. Well, okay, but there's a million different things that can be wrong with the hip, because, and not knowing what that is specifically, you're not going to then know what that cascade effect could potentially be, but then understand and know how to manage it, right? I mean, you mentioned, you know, tempos and isometric holds, but I think it's important, you know, for people to recognize too, that just in variations, like if you get back pain when you squat to full depth, don't squat to full depth, but you can still squat. So, you know, there are ways to allow yourself to train through an injury without further injuring yourself and without feeling like you have to become a couch potato.
And that's the something like squat depth is a good example of principles versus rules. And with training, there are no rules. Mm-hmm. There are principles that we need to be respectful of and adhere to in terms of all of the safety and the efficacy that we all know. But case in point, a principle is, well, A, do no harm, right? So why would you have somebody or force somebody to squat to a certain depth when it's obviously an uncomfortable position for them to be in. So you want to either not go to those ranges of motion or address the reasons as to why those ranges of motion aren't accessible, clean them up, and then add load to it or add depth to it. But rounding that all out, I did want to mention one last quick thing on this, and that is the fluid aspect to the itises. And we need to be very cognizant of the fact that all soft tissue in the body is roughly composed of about 75% water. So when we're having these chronic issues, very often there's a corresponding, underhydration or underfueling that's going on as well. So while water consumption is a part of the process here, or part of the recipe, the other factors are blood circulation, lymphatic circulation, hyaluronic acid, and basically all of the fluids that allow our joints to be mobile and move well. So when we're dealing with the itises, we need to make sure that we're addressing the circulation aspects as well. Blood flow restriction training, flossing, even just really anything that's aerobic in nature, all are going to be great options that you can look to help expedite the return to play or recovery.